What is poppin' YouTube? Back again with another video. Today we're doing my top 6 sleeper running backs for 2023 fantasy football. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Best free way to support the channel. We're putting out a lot more content as we head into fantasy football season. Let's go. The first player we're going to be talking about today is Elijah Mitchell of the San Francisco 49ers. Now, Elijah Mitchell is the backup to CMC, and that's what I hear you saying. Caleb, why are you saying a late round running back who has no potential to start? The thing is with Elijah Mitchell is he has bell cow potential if he were to ever have a large percentage of the workload, if something were to happen to CMC. Now, we can't project injuries, but if we look back at his rookie season, when the 49ers drafted Trey Sermon and everyone was hype about Trey Sermon because he was a third round pick and Elijah Mitchell was in the 6th round, and then Elijah Mitchell comes out and puts up an RB14 on the fantasy points per game with 15 fantasy points per game in the 11 games that he played in 2021. Now, he did play 5 games in 2022 before his injury, and we haven't yet got to see the splits between CMC and Elijah Mitchell. But if we look over on RotoViz, they have a RotoViz range of outcomes for running backs. And there's 2 different fields. We see in PPR, his average points per game is about going to be around 7.9. But if we look at his high, so if something were to happen to CMC, we're talking about a running back that could get back to that 14.6 to 15 fantasy points per game. Compared to, yes, maybe something doesn't happen to CMC, but he could still get you a solid 8 points per game in fantasy football. Because like I said, we haven't seen the splits between CMC and Elijah Mitchell. And we know good and well, with Kyle Shanahan, the man is unpredictable. So Elijah Mitchell is my first sleeper running back that I'm targeting everywhere in fantasy football. My second late round running back that I'm targeting in fantasy football is Samaje Perine, currently going off the board, RB34, RB35 on Underdog. Denver Broncos, Javonte Williams. We're unsure of how healthy Javonte Williams is going to be for week 1, week 2, week 3, coming off the ACL injury. I know all reports are positive, but all reports always are positive at this point in the offseason until we get into training camp and preseason. We start to get a little bit more clearer picture. But even if Javonte Williams is 100% ready to go, how ready to go is Javonte Williams going to be for the Denver Broncos? We're expecting an improved offense under Sean Payton. We have Jerry Jeudy taking the next step. We have Russell Wilson finally being able to cook. And if the Denver Broncos offense is finally able to cook, how is that going to impact Samaje Perine as a late round running back? And if we can even see when he's able to get the elite level points per game outcomes, if we look at a points per game where you have a minimum snap share of 40% and 4 games to qualify, you had Samaje Perine as a top 20 back with 14.8 fantasy points per game, which is absolutely crazy for a guy who is currently, like I said, going off the board RB35, RB40. Guy could give you some really quality spot starts. And when he does start, we're talking about a very solid high-end RB2, low-end RB1 on a week-to-week basis. So I love me some Samaje Perine, and he's my second running back. My third running back is going to be Devin Singletary. Now, I do think Devin Singletary is just a jag. He's just another guy. But when you put him on an offense in the Houston Texans, there's not a lot of wide receiver depth. So we're assuming that CJ Stroud is going to be scrambling for his life, not being able to throw to anybody. So what are they going to do? They're going to run the ball between Dameon Pierce and Devin Singletary. Now, Devin Singletary hasn't ever had bell cow type success, ton of touchdown upside, because he's always been playing on the Buffalo Bills. 2021, he had 8 touchdowns. 2022, he had 6 touchdowns. But if we look at a fantasy points per game basis, we're talking about RB24 in 2021, and in 2022, he was RB30. So we're saying, okay, RB30 seems to be kind of like his floor slash ceiling. But if we look at Underdog currently right now, he's going off the board as RB49. So you have a wide gap to even get to where we think Devin Singletary will probably finish this season. Now, I'm not saying Devin Singletary is an amazing player, but when you're able to get him at that type of value, especially in Underdog leagues and in your redraft leagues, you're loving the value for a late round running back and Devin Singletary. I'm not saying he's winning your league, but I am saying he has potential to have quality weeks supplementing you in your RB2 spot or flex spots in the fantasy football season. My fourth running back we're going to talk about today is Antonio Gibson. All of a sudden, we had Eric Bieniemy to the Washington Commanders offense, and I am ready to see Antonio Gibson unlocked. Now, we know clearly that Antonio Gibson is not the bell cow. They brought in Brian Robinson. They brought in Chris Rodriguez as a 6th round pick. And a lot of people are all of a sudden putting Antonio Gibson on the back burner. But we can't do that with Antonio Gibson because we do know the elite level athlete that he is. And he's only 25 years old. As a 6', 228, wide receiver running back hybrid, this man is going to step into that Jerick McKinnon, JD McKissick type role. And I think we could be talking about a guy that could be pushing 65 receptions. And that's something that's super exciting for me for Antonio Gibson. So I love me some Antonio Gibson, especially when we look at the last 3 seasons. As much as we say it's been rough sledding for Antonio Gibson. 2020, 14.4 fantasy points per game. 2021, 14.3 fantasy points per game. And last year in 2022, 11.1 fantasy points per game. Put him as the RB28. Now, it was a little bit of a down year last year for Antonio Gibson because people were overvaluing him. I was one of those people that were overvaluing him. But right now in underdog leagues, Antonio Gibson's going off the board as RB31. And if we just said, like last year felt like his floor with 11.1 fantasy points per game. It was a rough year. RB28. I feel like we're drafting him at his floor with the potential that maybe he finally gets unlocked with Eric Bieniemy and more of a high level type offense. That all depends on how good we see Sam Howell. If things fall off quick, things probably will fall off quick for Antonio Gibson. But I do like me some Antonio Gibson this year, super late as a running back target. My fifth running back we're going to talk about today is CEH. Eric Bieniemy leaves Kansas City, and Clyde Edwards-Helaire probably should be leaving as well because it's been absolutely brutal sledding. 2020, 13.5 fantasy points per game. 2021, only played 10 games, 11.8. And last year, in 10 games played, only 9.8 fantasy points per game, put him as the RB34, where he was getting passed on the depth chart by 7th round Isaiah Pacheco, clean, very good running back. And Jerick McKinnon was also getting in the game over CEH. CEH just seems to lack burst, lack instincts. Why am I taking a shot on this? Because as we've seen each and every year with the Kansas City Chiefs offense, even though there might be a running back that's projected to be the starter, it typically doesn't finish that way. I mean, if we look at years past, CEH was performing, but there was also Darrell Williams. There was also Jerick McKinnon. Last season, like we were saying, there was Isaiah Pacheco, Jerick McKinnon, even Rojo at the beginning of the season. There's so many running backs that it's just a matter of time before one ends up actually hitting. And if CEH for any reason gets on the field, any reason is the starter, we're talking about CEH with top 20, top 24 potential on a week-to-week finish basis. And for me, that is enough to be taking a late round shot on CEH. Now, I'm not saying that CEH is going to save your fantasy football teams. That is far from the truth. But when you're able to get CEH at RB64, that is something that's super exciting to me. And I'm taking CEH at RB64 all day long. Late round of my underdog drafts. Might as well take a shot, especially when he's like your RB5, RB6. When you're playing in lineup, you could end up dropping him, but I do like the shot on CEH. And my sixth and final running back that we're going to talk about today is going to be Tyjae Spears. Now, I know what you're saying, Caleb. Derrick Henry never gets hurt. That's fair. But Tyjae Spears is a quality level running back drafted in the 3rd round. And we saw how hype everyone was last season when Hassan Haskins was having to be started in a lot of people's championship lineups in Dynasty, in redraft, just because of all the injuries that happened in the running back landscape. But the thing with Tyjae Spears is an even more athletic running back. We're talking about a guy that's 5'10", 201. Like I said, was drafted early 3rd round, and he has very impressive metrics with a 4.59 40-yard dash and a college dominator rating that is very good with a 98.3 athleticism score. The thing that people are going to harp on with Tyjae Spears is the fact that he is essentially missing his ACLs. And yes, I don't think his long-term outlook in Dynasty is great. But when we're talking purely about redraft fantasy football, we're looking for these late round shots where if something were to happen to the guy in front of them, they're playing in a very productive offense. We're looking at now an offense that has Treylon Burks, Chig, and now DeAndre Hopkins. If Tyjae Spears, for any reason, had to start any game because Derrick Henry got nicked up, we're talking about Tyjae Spears as, like we said, high-end RB2, low-end RB1 on that week, just based on the offense. Now, maybe he doesn't get those type of carries. Maybe they don't use him in the exact same way that Derrick Henry. But I will say this, Tyjae Spears is very, very athletic, and especially with a player that's coming in young legs, probably not going to have to carry the ball a ton because he's not going to have to be getting in there when Derrick Henry's in there taking 25, 30 carries a game. Absolute bulldozer of a man. I do love me some Tyjae Spears in the late round. So let me know down below, do you like any of these late round running backs? Are you going to be targeting any of these late round running backs? We're putting out a video day at this point. We're really grinding as we head into redraft season. So I appreciate everyone for tuning in. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Best free way to support the channel. And I'll catch you on the next one. Peace.